What's the traumatic memory you'll never be able to erase? When my son was kidnapped for a day by the neighborhood psycho, I thought we'd never see him again. Luckily, the police acted fast and found him after a day, but ever since then, he has permanent PTSD symptoms. So 3 years after we moved to Jefferson Heights, I thought we'd finally found stability for Josh. The therapy was working, and he'd even started to love science again. I should have noticed the red flags earlier. Josh would come home exhausted, his hands shaking slightly as he worked through problem sets until 2 a.m. Ms. Poi doesn't give extensions, Mom, he said. She says trauma isn't an excuse for weakness. The thing about Josh was that he never complained. He was the kind of kid who made you think he was handling everything fine. So I knew his tears meant that he really was at his breaking point. I can't do it anymore, he whispered. I had a flashback during the test, and she told me to either finish or leave, in front of everyone. Finally, I was done. And the next morning, I marched to Principal Fitch's office with no F's given. Mrs. Williams, he said, that practiced smile not reaching his eyes. You have to understand, we can't make special accommodations for every student who claims anxiety. It wouldn't be fair to the others. I wanted to scream that Josh had documented PTSD, that fairness didn't mean treating a traumatized child like a machine, but I was so shocked that no words came out. The other parents were worse. At pickup, I'd overhear conversations, hear whisperings like, Fitch was right about these kids being too soft, or my daughter says that Josh boy gets special treatment just because he's sad. The message was clear. Asking for help made you weak. And even though graduation was only a few months away, I couldn't give up. Josh's empty eyes haunted me. So that weekend, I did something I'd never done before. I reached out to other parents from Ms. Poi's previous classes. What I found made my hands shake. 17 transfers over 5 years, 3 hospitalizations, 2 sewer slide attempts, all citing academic pressure. I was still staring at my phone when Josh came downstairs. The boy moved like a ghost. Mom, I can't go back to her class, he said, voice shaking. You don't have to. He looked at me surprised. But Fitch said, Fitch can go to hell. I interrupted. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Emma Stanley, whose mother told me she'd transferred after a nervous breakdown, about David Kim, who'd been hospitalized for exhaustion, about all the bright kids Ms. Poi had broken in the name of toughness. The next morning, I went to the district office 3 hours before it opened. I sat in my car, compiling every email, every documented incident, every conversation with other parents. What emerged was a pattern of systematic abuse disguised as academic excellence. I filed formal complaints with everyone, the school board, the state education department, the Office for Civil Rights. Then I waited. The response came fast. Fitch called me personally. Mrs. Williams, his voice was ice. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Josh is a bright boy, but perhaps AP chemistry is too advanced for someone with his challenges. His challenges? I gripped the phone. You mean his documented disability that you're legally required to accommodate? Now let's not throw around legal threats. Like you threw my son's mental health in the trash? I have 17 other families ready to join me in a lawsuit. 17 families whose children Ms. Poi destroyed while you cheered her on. The investigation that followed was swift and ugly. Poi tried to paint Josh as attention-seeking. Fitch testified that accommodations would water down their rigorous program, but we had documentation. Emails where Poi called traumatized students weak, where Fitch instructed teachers to weed out the fragile ones. During the hearing, Josh had to testify. She said my dad would be disappointed in me, Josh whispered. Ms. Poi said if I couldn't handle chemistry, I couldn't handle life. The room went silent. Even Fitch's lawyer looked uncomfortable. Poi was placed on administrative leave that day. Fitch followed a week later when the full scope of his warrior teacher philosophy came to light. 15 years of educators trained to break children in the name of excellence. I didn't know it at the time, but Fitch wasn't happy with the verdict, and soon my life would be ruined. Full story on channel, link below.